welcome to another edition of Unpluggered as we reflect on round 6 of the 2020 season. It's been mostly pretty smooth sailing over the course of the first 5 weeks of the season. There was a glitch against Collingwood and obviously that pesky COVID 10-week break, but ever since the second resumption, it had been pretty good until we hit a submerged log at quarter time on Saturday against Fremantle, a game that was effectively shot to bits. We have actually lost from further in front against Fremantle before, back in 2002, but a fairly disastrous day. And for anyone who follows us on social media, I in particular, I was particularly negative and down in the dumps. I think I was declaring season over after that particular game, but we probably mellowed a little bit since then. That the response of the club has been, strong but fairly resilient. So hopefully we see that on Monday, but a bitterly disappointing loss to a Fremantle side that we led by 37 points early in the second quarter and still led by 5 goals late in the first half. Drew level in the last quarter, but a very, very tough loss to take. We are here for Andy's Doggy Daycare at 4 Rickard Street in East Brunswick, and they are open through COVID as well. For those of you that are working and need daycare for your pooches, you can head on out there. You can check them out on Facebook at Andy's Doggy Daycare or andysdoggydaycare.com.au online to see Shane and all of the team. But Nick, to you, first of all, it was really impossible at quarter time to fathom what was going to happen next.
It was devastating. I was in line for 150-point win at that stage. We were all over him. We were moving the ball quickly. We were sharp. We were just running on top of the ground. We were ahead of them at every contest. Hit the ball hard. We're tackling hard. Barely dropped a mark. We're hitting targets. We're kicking goals. It's impossible to see. Impossible to see what was going to come next. And that was devastating. I think you're not the only one who gave them a bit of a spray on socials after the game. That was incredibly difficult to watch and to stomach that. And there's something to be said about Fremantle, and I think we should probably just never play them again because something always happens when we play them. It's just we shouldn't be allowed to play them and just call the game off, just forfeit, just give them the 4 points. It's just enough is enough. Like that's legitimately how I felt after the game on the weekend. And like you said, mellowed a little bit, had a few beers and a few whiskeys and a few wines and potentially a few more since then. But I'm still drinking now. Look, it was devastating. It was devastating.
H, I guess we've got a group where we sort of discuss the games as they're unfolding, given we can't watch them together at the moment. But I can't imagine. I mean, live markets tell you one thing. I think we're $1.02 at quarter time, but you would have had to have travelled a long way to find somebody that would have thought we could lose that game from there.
Oh, absolutely. We obviously would never expected to fly out of the blocks the way we did. That's not something we really ever thought we would see happen. But then I don't know whether it came a little bit to what I was leading to last week in the way that Freo have been up there for 4 weeks already, and we just haven't. I mean, we got off to a fly, but we hadn't settled into the actual location itself, I think, and they just pegged us back, and their conditioning, I think, got us in the end. So would have been nice to have actually maybe had a couple of games up there in a row and then be looking at the Adelaide games. But it's going to have to be a bit of an ask to go to Adelaide for 2 weeks now and travelling between them, which is going to be interesting too.
What was, I think, really disappointing from my end, I think, putting aside the whole quarter time, and the overwhelming disappointment of that performance after quarter time, is that we actually got back into it in that last quarter and kind of willed ourselves. We weren't playing well by any means. We still were playing terrible football, but we somehow willed ourselves back into a position to win the game and let it slip again. And that was what was really disappointing. I thought once we got to that point where we kind of, back in it, there was a kick in it, and then we drew level. I thought that we'd get it back from that point, but to let it slip again was really disappointing. One thing I thought was really interesting was at quarter time, we were at 98.3% chance of winning that game, according to Stats Insider's live model. And it's remarkable that we dropped that game. Absolutely remarkable.
Yeah, you talk about that last bit when we've drawn level. I think what I was looking at, I noticed a lot. They showed behind the goal from the Freo end when they took the mark and he hit the goal as the ball was coming down. It looked like a lot of players sort of ran forward to be the hero.
Oh yeah,
They ended up with 3 players unmarked in their forward 50. That should
made you
not
sick
happen.
in the stomach. Yeah, when Walters won the ball at halfback and kicked it forward, I think Akers was involved in that. But you just looked up and said, "There's Freo players everywhere." You couldn't even see a St Kilda player at that point. But yeah, I remember I sort of put that loss up around the 99 Hawthorn loss in terms of level of extreme frustration of home and away games. I think the most painful home and away loss I've ever seen was the loss to Port Adelaide in 2017 when Robbie Gray kicked that goal on the siren, because that probably cost us a spot in the 8. But that was this is in the top 3 or 4 in terms of home and away losses, and the North loss in round 1 wasn't that far behind. But you almost got over that because you thought, footy's stuffed, but we don't even know if we're coming back. Who cares? But now that we know that we're going to have a season and we're going to be around the mark, we're going to be 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. You look at a loss like that, it's just a complete waste. And I remember I was filthy at 3/4 time, and then when they got 3 goals clear, I was filthy. And then when we levelled the scores, I was still filthy. I thought, even if we win this game, I'm going to be filthy because we completely butchered this opportunity. And then obviously to give up that late goal and lose was just really, really disappointing. And I remember thinking at the time that, such a demoralising loss when you've just entered a hub and you're not going to get home for 3 months would be the worst possible thing that could happen, because Jaron Geary spoke during the week to the players saying, look, you're going to live in each other's pockets for a couple of months, which means you're going to annoy each other from time to time, and you've got to obviously find a way to work through that. And I thought, well, nothing's going to annoy you more than a loss like that. And maybe it would sort of tear at the fabric of the group. But I think they've responded pretty well. Obviously, we won't know their response until they play the Crows on Monday. But they've got to get back on the bike. There's still an opportunity this season. I think there's only 2 teams outside the 8 now that can make the finals, and they're West Coast and GWS. We're in the 8. So there's 2 spots up for grabs. I think West Coast and the Giants will get in. It's just at whose expense they do it.
Yeah, I think both of you kind of hit the nail on the head. And I think, Parker, I messaged you at some point that night after the game and said, I'm going to give him a smashing on this week's podcast. And I haven't really done that. As I said, I've kind of mellowed a little bit since then. But, I think, you talked about it, that front-running ability in those last few minutes. And Parker, when you mentioned Walters, and Michael Walters, rightly so, gets a lot of credit for that kick. That was a magnificent kick of the football, and gets a lot of credit for it, as he should. But where were we? Where were we? Like you said, everyone had run forward to centre to kick that winning goal, or to score to win the game. Where were our guys? I think we had Wilkie and Carlisle and Howard with the last line of defence, and they had everyone running forward at the same time. And so there were 7 or 8 guys that were absolutely free inside 50, and any one of them could have kicked that goal or scored to win the game. And what's going to be really interesting is to see how they come out in the first quarter on Monday, because you get the feeling that while it's been a really strong week from Ratton and the coaching team, it wasn't that kind of hairdryer treatment that would have happened in days of old, whether it's Stan Alves or previous coaches, probably Malcolm Blight as well. When you come off a loss like that, you probably get smashed on the track that week. But it doesn't seem like everything coming out of the club this week, it doesn't seem like that's happened, but it has been a really stern, solid week where the law's been laid down to them, and we saw the video where Rats asked them, who do you want to be? Do you want to be a team that plays good footy some of the time and lets it slip, or do you want to be a team that really makes your mark on a competition? And I think we'll see in the first 30 minutes, the first 20 minutes on Monday night, what the response is. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how they come out. And I hope it's like the first quarter on the weekend, because that shows how good we can be and what type of football we can play. But, really looking forward to it. I just want to get this week over and done with.
Probably will never feel safe in the game again, mate.
Yeah, I was going to say, it'd be interesting to see whether there's any players made sort of example of this week and get dropped, and maybe we do bring in some younger kids for to give maybe some older players a week off to going to Adelaide, and then have them ready for the next week. It's going to be an interesting 2 weeks now. Do we make a statement? Do we go, look, you weren't your best. Have a week off. We're
There are
going to give
blokes
someone else a go. Yeah.
There are blokes that are, I guess, senior players at the club that are struggling at the moment. Now, Seb Ross has got credits in the bank. He's a best and fairest winner and a vice captain, but he's struggling for his best form. Brad Hill's clearly struggling. And if you look at those two comeback games against North, he had 10 possessions in the first half, 1 in the second. And against Fremantle on the weekend, he had 4 possessions in the second half. So, unfortunately, the other high-prize recruit's been arguably the worst defender, with us going missing in big stages of games. I thought Zach Jones worked pretty hard, but there were others that, just completely lost all run, lost all dare. There were some senior players amongst that lot, and that's obviously where you want a bit of leadership. I thought Geary started well, but sort of drifted out of the game. But, I mean, I don't think they're going to drop Ross. I don't think they're going to drop Hill, but they'd be 2 players that I'd be asking some questions of, that's for sure.
It's a big one, because I think the way that Ratton coaches reminds me a lot of how Grant Thomas coached. Is a lot about the relationships, and he wants to play good football as well. I see a lot of Tomo in the way Rats coaches, and there was obviously some famous moments where Grant Thomas made examples of some of those senior players. You know, Nick Del Santo dropped and Stephen Milne dropped after games where they were. Potentially squibbing a contest or not hitting it hard enough and that sort of thing. And there are a few of those senior guys that you've mentioned that are doing just that. And during the game, there were, following on social media, there was a lot of, concerns, probably the wrong word, but admonishing of guys like Hill and Ross for not putting the head over the ball or not running hard enough and getting back on defence. And it's going to be interesting to see if, like you said, if Rats does make an example of some of those guys like a Seb Ross or a Brad Hill. Like you said, it's hard to see them dropping Brad Hill because he gives us something that we don't have anywhere else. But Ross is the interesting one because he's clearly better than what he's shown. And even when we were playing good footy the last few weeks, he still wasn't at his best. And so I wonder if there's something in the game style that doesn't suit him, or maybe his role's changed. I'm not sure, but he doesn't seem to be playing at his best and fairest capacity. Maybe that he's got some better players around him now, but it is the really interesting one to see whether there are senior guys drop this week.
I was about to say, it feels like he has been given a different role or something. He's not in the same spots we were seeing him in, getting the ball in the previous couple of years. He pops up and you go, okay, where have you been? He just sort of shows up out of nowhere occasionally, and then you don't see him for, say, another 10, 15 minutes. But he had that presence sort of, I guess, in the middle of the field, and then you'd see him quite often coming off the back line in last season. But this year it's like, oh, there he is on the wing. But yeah, I just don't know what his position is this year.
Yeah, it is fascinating, but we'll obviously see what they do at the selection. I said at the time that you listen to this podcast, those teams may have dropped, obviously scheduled for about 6:30 on a Friday evening for a Monday night game. But we'll try to find some votes out of that. At quarter time would have been just about everyone, but by the end of it, probably hard to determine. I ended up giving 3 again to Jack Steele. I know he did dominate the whole way through, but I thought in terms of effort and intensity around the ball, he was again our best player. I thought Tim Membry was influential, kicked 3 and pushed up the ground and got a bit of the footy. So I gave him 2 votes, and the one vote was really hard. I know he had goals kicked on him to some degree, but I think in terms of his composure and effort, I did give Cal Wilkie a vote. He or Carlisle could have probably got the last one, but I went with Wilkie. So 3 Steele, 2 Membry, 1 Wilkie. H, how did you go?
I actually gave 3 to Membry. I felt like he really kept presenting even when most of the other players were down at the time. Provided the target all day. When we didn't have the ball, obviously he's a lot less ineffective, but as soon as he was the first player we're kicking to, and he was able to actually get there to make the contest the majority of the time. They just say 3 goals. I couldn't really put anyone else ahead of him. 2, as much as he gets sort of kicked around for his disposal and the what he's doing with the ball, but Gresham gets in there. He gets the ball out. He gets it forward. The amount of times he's getting the ball out of the middle and actually getting it into our forward line, which with the 6 forward, 6 back now, a kick straight out of the centre to the forward line is effective kick because you've got the one-on-one everywhere. You haven't got the flood. You haven't got the loose player. You haven't got this. So I don't understand everyone basically digging in at the moment. He's giving us first use. So yeah, I'm giving him 2, and yeah, 1 to Jack Steele. A solid effort once again. Still had a lot of the ball himself, but it just didn't feel like he was as effective as against Cripps. I mean, his job probably went away halfway through the game because Fife ended up down forward for half a game. And I don't know whether then he kind of went, oh, okay, who am I going to take now? But I don't think he took Walters. Walters seemed to get a lot of the ball in the middle. Not sure where his job became after that though.
Yeah, it's an interesting one on Seal because I thought he was our best player, but only for the fact that he was one of the few that kept working when everything was going against us, when the tide was running over us. He was one of the few that kept running and kept presenting and kept working hard. He had 22 touches. He is by far our highest possession getter for the day. 4 clearances, 370 odd metres gained. He kept working even when everything was going against us. 2 I gave to Zach Jones, bit of an interesting one, I think, but he only had 15 touches, but he did kick 2 goals and 401 metres gained. Just shows that he kept running, kept working in that second half. One of the few that kept actually looking to attack when he did get the ball. And unfortunately, we didn't get it in his hands enough. Once we got off half back and forward of centre, we just didn't give it to him enough for him to be effective late in the game. But he kept working, kept pushing it forward when not many of our guys were doing that, and we had the tendency to go backwards and chip sideways and that sort of stuff. He kept going forward. And actually, like you, I went Gresham 1. I thought when the chips were down, he got stuck in. In that last quarter, he was really effective and really dynamic and really led that comeback. It's a shame that he didn't have many helpers because I thought that if a few other guys had stood up in those key moments when Gresham did, that we probably get over the line in those last few minutes. But, I thought that was impressive. He's still a young kid and he's still learning that midfield role at senior level. I think we forget how good he was as a forward pocket and as a half forward in those first few years of his career. And he's now pretty much a full-time midfielder. And he's going up against guys that are much bigger than him, much stronger than him. And he's winning the ball. He's playing hard, tough football. His disposal does let him down at times, I think, because his brain moves quicker than the rest of him, and I think he gets under pressure when he gets the ball at times. But I thought he was impressive in his leadership for a young kid to keep working and keep banging it forward in those last few minutes and to really have an impact on the game was impressive for Gresham. So the 1 for him.
And poor old Max King missed a couple of chances in the second quarter. Had he converted one or both of those, it's probably a good night at half time.
And Membry misses that one in the last quarter that he'd kick that 10 out of 10.
Yeah,
I mean, he never misses from there. So
thankfully we got the goal from the turnover. I think the Gresham one, but that was when Butler sort of centred the ball when he was 8 metres out and just had to kick a goal. But such was the frustrating nature of the day. But we're now going to lighten it up a little bit with our featured guest on today's program. It's 252 game superstar Justin Peckett.
It's around centre half forward, and that's just about it.
Great athletic work, opens it up for Peckett. The open goal beckons, and he finds it. Kaczynski can go to Burke, he will. And Nathan will mark and play on. And could he kick a goal from here? He goes along to the square, Peckett back there. McMahon the pressure. Peckett could be the hero. Justin Peckett.
Well, it is our great pleasure to chat with one of St Kilda's stalwarts from throughout the 90s and into the 2000s. A part of the 97 grand final team, was runner-up in the best and fairest in that season, also finished third in the BNF in 1994, and is a 250-game player for the Saints, and one of the more familiar faces over that era. I speak of Justin Peckett. And Frankie, thanks for joining us today.
No worries. Good to be here. Don't often hear the word Frankie either, so it's always a bit of a blast from the past.
We spoke to Andrew Thompson last week, who was, I guess, a bit of a journeyman before he got to St Kilda or got his AFL opportunity, and I guess you were similar. You were a best and fairest winner in the under-19s. You'd been in the system at the Saints for a few years before getting your opportunity in 1992. It was the one game that year, and then they started to come later. And I guess, like Tomo, you made the most of those opportunities. But can you take us through that journey through to your debut, I guess, in the early 20s, which would have taken a bit of time?
Yeah, well, I was part of the old system where the draft based on where you lived. So I grew up in Frankston and was zoned to St Kilda and got an invite when I was playing under 17s at Coringle, my junior club, as a 16-year-old to play in the under 19s, which I did in 89. That was when I first went to the club, and played under 19s, some reserves, and then got an opportunity to play in the seniors in round 4, 1992. Against Hawthorn at Moorabbin, so it was quite a big deal. I grew up a Saints supporter, as all my family did, so it was pretty awesome to get a game. It was a good win by the boys too, so we beat Hawthorn at Moorabbin, but I only got about 5 minutes game time in the last quarter, and so didn't actually touch the footy, and then got dropped that week and didn't play another game in the seniors for that year. So I thought I might have been one of those guys that had the one game and that was it. But then 93, I think I played pretty much most games apart from a couple with injuries. So, it was an interesting start and some highs there. But also, I guess having spent so much time on the bench for that first game, I was starting to get a little bit shitty and was almost at the point where if you're not going to put me on for too long, don't worry about it. But maybe that's why I didn't get a touch. But looking back, it was good time. But it wasn't until 93, 94 where I sort of started to get a regular senior game.
You mentioned that you don't get it very often anymore, but where did the Frankie nickname come from?
From memory, some guys at school, primary school, gave it to me. I don't think it was overly complimentary in terms of the reason why. Maybe, I'm not sure. I can't quite remember, but it's just been something that stuck with me. When I went and played under 19s, the year after, in my second year, a number of sort of Coringle players came and played as well. And I think they just brought it with them and started calling me Frankie at the club. And then it took off and got to the point where people were coming up to my mum after a game in the seniors and sort of say to mum, "Oh, gee, Frank played a good game today." And she'd be looking at him going, "What?" And they, Frank played a really good game. She's going, "Who the hell's Frank?" "Oh, Frankie." And she, "Oh, right, you mean Justin?" And anyway, it's just been a name that's carried with me. And my youngest, my daughter, I've called her Frankie. So I've passed that on to her now.
So you had that point where you played the under 19s, you get up to the list and nothing's happening there, and you just moved on, played reserves. Was there a point there you sort of thinking, okay, you got that first game, as you say, in 92, the points are going, okay, this is not going to happen for me, not going to happen for me. But once you did get that chance that in 93, did you really make sure that you stuck and you were in the team?
Look, yeah. I mean, I was really grateful to get another opportunity, and I got some practice games at the start of the year, and I went okay. And I sort of thought, I reckon I'm half a chance here to perhaps start round one in 93. And so, back then, I was a back pocket player, and footy was a bit different in the early 90s to what it is now. And so you sort of played that position, and I went okay. And so, you don't think you're going to play the full season. You do your best week by week, and then all of a sudden you're halfway through and you cemented a spot, so to speak. So, I just tried to do the role that I was given on each week, and lucky enough was able to sort of hang around for about another 16 years.
You certainly did. But another interesting one, I guess, the evolution of your jumper numbers. You're one of very few players to have worn 4 different numbers at AFL level. You started obviously at 53, which is one of the highest numbers ever. I think Nicky Winmar wore 60 in a final in 91 after getting his jumper torn, but there wouldn't be many higher than that. You then went to 29, which was a famous number at St Kilda. Obviously, you graduated from that. So did Nathan Burke, Ozzie Jones, Andrew Thompson, Stephen Baker. So plenty of good players for 29. You went to 8 and then to 1. Can you sort of take us through the steps? Obviously, you couldn't go any higher once you got to 1.
No, I was really privileged to be offered the opportunity to wear the number 1 Guernsey. As I said, grew up a Saints supporter. I got photos of myself as a young kid with the Saints jumper on with Barks' number 1 on the back. So to get that opportunity was brilliant, and I was never going to say no and knock that one back. But yeah, I've had my time again. I'd probably, if I could, if it was possible, I'd keep 53, and I would have worn 53 for my whole career. So I think the list sizes got shorter and shorter, so 53 wasn't a number that you could have anymore. And so yeah, just again at the end of the season or the start of the season, they'd offer up a number given who's either been given the arse or who's retired, and if you wanted to take it, you could. And so I got offered a couple of jumpers. I said, yeah, sure, no worries. I didn't really give it too much thought at the time. But looking back, yeah, I would have loved to have made 53 my own and kept that for my entire career. And when I retired from the Saints, I went back and played at Kringle for 6 or 7 years. And they said to me, "Do you want number one?" And I said, "No, give me a high number." So they gave me 51. So that was I carried 51 around for 100 games at the Bulls, and enjoyed wearing the bigger number.
As a Saints fan growing up, what was it like walking into those change rooms and you got Plugger and Spud Frawley and those sort of guys? Yeah, as a Saints fan, what's that like?
It was amazing. I mean, I was 16 when I first got to the club, and just walking into Moorabbin, the place where you go every Saturday with your family, and all the shenanigans that would go on at Moorabbin, and you, as a young kid, you're sort of just sitting there and watching. Then all of a sudden, you're inside the four walls, and you're in the change rooms, and you're in the showers, and you're in the gym, and you're running on the oval. It was just, my eyes just lit up. And how good's this? This is, just brilliant to be able to be inside the club and seeing some of the play. I mean, I didn't speak for the first couple of years as you do when you're a young kid, but you just sit and you watch. And I still had jumpers at home with player numbers on it, or the duffel coat with the names down the arm, and all of a sudden you're in and amongst it. So it was amazing, brilliant. And it's unfortunate that I'm sure there's still some players that get to play at their club that they grew up barracking for, but it'd be few and far between these days.
Now, in your first year, you basically talking about keeping placing aside, you actually led all rookies from that season in the way of tackles total for the league. Is that something that you concentrate on, your pressure, your basically keeping your opponent down, or was it just something that came along with the position you were playing in?
Yeah, well, again, I think as a back pocket player playing on the forward pocket, or the resting rover as it was, my job was to just play tight on my man and defend. And I didn't have any flair or anything like that. I was just a youngish kid coming in and trying to find my way and learn my craft. So I thought if I could just stop my opponent from kicking goals, then that'll keep me in the side. So it'd be interesting. I reckon my tackling stats would have got worse and worse with each year that went by. But I think as a young kid coming in, that was my role and that was my job, and that's probably why my stats were up at that early stage. But once you get a bit more confident and you feel like you can just go and get the ball yourself, I think that not everyone, but some of us, the tackling might have dropped off a little bit.
Obviously transitioned from Ken Sheldon to Stan Ells, third in the BNF in '94 that we spoke about. We've asked a lot of our guests, because a lot of our guests played in the '97 grand final, and you're one of those. You kicked a terrific goal in the last quarter when we were just sort of hanging on, trying to stay alive in that game. But you had a terrific season in '97. I guess your memories of the year and the run that obviously saw us get so close.
Yeah, it was interesting when you talk about the run. I remember just driving to games, just so confident that no matter what was happening in the game, we'd end up winning. And it was an amazing feeling, with that level of confidence. And, we had some evidence because we had won a number of games. And so as we were getting that run into the finals, just the joy and the confidence of just driving in to wherever we're playing and knowing that we're going to have a good day today, and you'd done the work, you trusted your teammates, and you knew that no matter what happened, we're a good chance to win. And so, there's obviously clubs and players that have done that year in, year out for a long period of time. And I know how good it felt for that shortish period that we were doing it. And I know the Saints sides of 2009 and 10 would have felt the same. And then obviously, playing in the grand final was, again, incredible and amazing, and the greatest moment of your life. And then by 5 o'clock, it's an absolute nightmare. So, it's something I've never watched it since. I don't talk about it all that much. I've only just started being able to watch grand finals because it hurts so much to watch them, and it's one of those opportunities that we'll never get again. And so, incredibly disappointing. But I mean, from where we'd been and to where we got to, it was significant and bit of a basket case for a little while there as a club, and then to be able to play some finals regularly was outstanding.
You mentioned that feeling of driving to the game and just feeling like you're going to win no matter what. What happened kind of halfway or 3/4 of the way through 1998? I mean, a lot of teams suffer that kind of grand final hangover. I'm not sure that's something that can be talked about when you talk about St Kilda in 98, because we started 12-4, and then kind of the wheels fell off. What happened after that point?
Yeah, I don't know. It was a complete reverse of what I was saying about 97. It was, it was like, and the opposition knew it too. And once we had that, was it against Hawthorn? I can't remember the tipping point of where it just got inside our psyche. And then, doubts come in and you're still training hard and you still want to play well. And then all of a sudden something happens in the game and you sort of in your head sort of go, oh, here we go again, and so that then impacts the way you perform. And we just couldn't wrestle that back enough to then get into the finals and be a fair income, a fair income threat in the final. So I don't know what the actual answer is, but it was disappointing, frustrating, sad. It was a whole range of things the way that 98 finished up.
And then on to 99, had Tim Watson come in. Again, started off the season really well, drifted off a little bit towards the end there. Then 2000, we know that just went completely downhill. Were you at a point of your career there that you're going, okay, I'm just got to step up here. I'm a leader of the club. This is, I've got to start basically bringing these young kids through and getting them to help us out more and lift this club back up to where we want to be again?
Yeah, I think it was, I'm not the most talented player, so I don't think that I was going to be able to drag them across, on field in the way that I played necessarily, but certainly, I guess, in terms of standards and the way we went about it, during the week and how tolerant we were of, poor performance or, poor attitude or, poor, commitment to training and all those sorts of things. I thought I could play a bit of a role there because I knew that even though I wasn't super old, but my time, I'm getting closer to the end. And so I became a little less tolerant for doing things that perhaps were going to hold us back. So I think that was part of the role that I could play at the club. And I think that the club started making some decisions which were quite brave and were decisions that were going to help us get off the bottom and move forward. And I think what happened when you had that draft with Rui and Cozzy and a few of those young blokes started to come in, Del Santo, Montagna and Goddard, I mean, that gave us all a bit of a lift because you got young, enthusiastic, talented kids coming in. So it does bring a bit of enthusiasm and a bit of drive and positivity. So I think all of that then lend itself to some of the performances we saw from the club in the sort of mid-2000s.
Kind of fascinating what you said before about obviously only just recently being able to watch grand finals, and I can tell you're obviously not alone with that. I mean, even as supporters, I mean, I like grand final day because I sort of spend it with mates, but it's a very painful day, I think, for all of us associated with the club because of those memories that it brings back. In 2009 and 10, when you had retired, the club played in grand finals again, and a lot of your teammates that you played with at the end of your career were still there playing in those games. Were you able to take those games in, and I imagine in a way they might have brought back some of those memories, unfortunately?
Yeah, I wanted the club to do well. I wanted the club to win because obviously a second premiership of the Saints is going to be one of the biggest things that's ever happened on the planet. So, if you can't be a part of it, as a supporter, you support it. However, I didn't watch them on TV, and I've never been to a grand final other than the 97 one physically. So I always hosted barbecues at my house here and had all my mates over, and I'd do all the cooking and cleaning up and just make sure everyone's having a good time. And I wouldn't watch the game. And it's only sort of been the last couple of years where I've sort of started to get a bit over myself and just start to watch it. But I still get, when the siren goes and you see them celebrating, you see them getting the medals and all that sort of stuff, that still hurts. So I haven't watched. I didn't watch any of the grand finals the Saints played in 9 and 10, and I don't know if I think now I could if the Saints get back there, but I think for a while there I was wallowing in my own misery and feeling sorry for myself.
Yeah, definitely not alone. I think Parko, you and H and myself and a few other guys have watched most of the last 15 grand finals together, and you've seen Sydney and Richmond and the Bulldogs and all of them break their drought. It's bittersweet, I think, most grand final days. But going back to 04 and 05, you talked about the influx of talent with Rui and Dal and Cozzy and those guys. There's clearly more than just young talent coming through. There was a change in culture and a change in style, I guess, of leadership at the club. And Grant Thomas takes over from Malcolm Blight. Rod Butters is president. What can you tell us about those days and what those guys did to change the culture at St Kilda?
Yeah, so I think you had, I can't remember what year it was, but you had Hamill and Gehrig and a couple of other senior players in Lawrence and Capuano. And so, I guess the makeup of the list changed, and you had some guys that were good at their craft and brought some experience with them. And then you had those young kids as well. And I think, Grant Thomas was the right coach at that right time because, he's very nurturing, very family orientated, treated the players as his own, just like his own kids. And that sort of built a really strong club environment, very inclusive, very supportive. They had some really top quality assistant coaches. So, from a club perspective, we're making some really good decisions around personnel, which clearly has a big impact on culture. There's a lot of player ownership as well, which I think is always a good thing. So, empowerment, allowing players to take more of a lead and a bit more ownership over their performances and the way that they prepare. My last 3 years, we went on some really amazing pre-season camps, for long periods of time. So, 3 to 4 weeks in London or South Africa or in China, and you get to do so much as a group, build your relationships, really get an understanding for each other, work on your game plan, work on your fitness, have a few beers together, and you just become a bit more of a tighter group and able to transfer that into the way that we played our footy. So, it wasn't perfect, but where we had been, particularly in that sort of middle period with our performances, it just enabled us to I guess, galvanise, get together and make some commitments. And, I thought Tomo was a good coach for us in that period. And we had some good players, obviously. We've always had good players as a club for the last 100-odd years. But we just started to play better team footy, which was very enjoyable. And it's one of the reasons why I wanted to hang on. I think I signed about 4 or 5 one-year deals towards the end because I didn't want to miss out, and I thought we were half a chance. And, Tomo, I used to do my own contracts towards the end. I didn't have a manager, and he'd say to me, "Well, you're not in our best 25." And I said, "Well, I don't care. I'll just keep training and I'll be there for when you need me. And I know what I can do, and if I can add some value, I will. And I'd rather do that than be sitting at home and hearing about you guys playing in finals and grand finals when perhaps I could have still been there." So it was a good time to be part of the club, and I feel that when I left, the club was in pretty good hands. So I really enjoyed that sort of latter part of my career, even though I was sort of a bit player and I'm off the bench or missing games, that sort of thing. So it was quite enjoyable.
The 1-year contract, that sort of thing. It's partly known that apparently a group of you got together in the older group of the club in the end of 2005 and basically came together and said, "We're going to go one more time." Is there much truth to that? And who was in that group? And was it round beers or was it actually in a gym going, "No, we can still do this"?
I'm not sure. If it did happen, I wasn't invited, so maybe they didn't want me to stick around for that extra year. But I remember there was a few of us that were injured in the Swans game. I can't remember if that was 2005. It might have been.
Prelim.
The prelim. And we're all sitting in the coach's box. And, obviously the defeat was incredibly disappointing. And I think, that might have been a night we sort of all looked at each other. And I mean, I was clearly borderline continuing, whether I wanted to or not. It's really the club's decision at that point. But I think the field players just said, "Well, okay, we're close, so we need to knuckle down and make sure that we, give it another good crack." So, I mean, Haas was never in doubt. He was always going to play for another 10 years after that. And I think there's probably only myself and Andrew Thompson as the older ones that were probably on the borderline of whether we continued or not. But I managed to convince Grant Thomas over a game of snooker that I'm worthy of a 12 more months. So I'm just lucky I'm a better snooker player than him. That's what we used the snooker table to work out whether I was playing again. So long answer to your question, but there would have been a bit of a resolve between some of the players, particularly the ones that missed the final, and some of the older ones that we're not too far away here. We've got something special. So.
I always recall you playing well in finals, the 04 period against Sydney in the semi, and the final against Adelaide in 05, the famous Harvey game, and obviously the grand final itself in 97. But the last one from me, what's post-football life look like for you? You said you played footy for a little while. I understand there were quite a few ex-Saints sort of around that competition. I know Troy Schwartz had a bit to do with Sorrento and various other clubs in that comp, but with leading teams and etc. What have you been up to post-retirement?
Yeah, so apart from having kids and playing some footy, I've been heavily involved with leading teams. And so leading teams had a pretty significant presence at the Saints through 94 through to 97, 98, and then again in the early to mid 2000s. And so I've worked with leading teams for 10 years while I played, and then part-time while I played, and then for about another, what's it been now, another 13 years or so full-time since I left playing footy. So I'm a director of leading teams. I work with all sorts of organisations and teams, working through, helping them to perform at a higher level as an organisation or as a team. And a lot of things I learned through footy and experience in good and bad teams, being able to sort of help other teams deal with their performances through some of the work that I've done previously with other organisations, but also, my experiences with, again, being in part of an elite sporting team, and the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Been in any music video clips lately, or was 1995 a one-off with Tism?
If I had my way, I'd be in a lot more video clips, but that's probably my greatest claim to fame. My Greg the Stop Sign cameo. It was. I loved it because Tism's one of my favourite bands, and I love music. So when the invite came out that they wanted a few players, I jumped at it. No one else really knew who Tism were. Could really care less. So I was all over it, and I've got a great photo at home of the band and myself, and quite a thrill. I still get it out every now and then and show people, guests, the video clip, and every now and then I've got a client that will Google me and come up with Greg the Stop Sign clip and want to show me during a work session. So if that's what I'm known for, then so be it. That's not a bad thing.
Well, I think we're allowed to use 7 seconds of it for an intro for you for this, so might try and do that. But yeah, the last one I had was during the 90s. I'm pretty sure it's 7 kids, isn't it? Yep.
Yeah. 7.
The older ones are mostly girls, I think, is it?
The oldest is a girl, and she's 28, and the youngest is a girl, and the rest are boys.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Because majority of the 90s seemed like, well, I mean, we didn't know at the time, but we'd almost be able to fill the AFLW team with the amount of girls that were coming through with all the players in the club there at one point. Did any of them show much interest in following your footsteps or getting into the game themselves?
The oldest 2 haven't, but I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 boys playing footy. So there's a couple that are sort of under 19, under 18, 17 sort of level, and then I've got a couple that's sort of under 12s and under 14. So they all love their footy. They're all passionate. I reckon there's a couple there that would like play for the Saints at some point. So who knows what will happen? But my Sundays and Saturdays from here on in, or post COVID, will be footy on Saturday and footy on Sunday. So it's enjoyable to watch them play, and they just love it when I give them advice and direction. They run a million miles, so I've slowly learned just to keep my mouth shut and just let them play and enjoy themselves. But it's hard to do sometimes.
Well, if I gets it, told them to take number 53 then.
I was going to say Geelong and Collingwood playing tonight. I've probably got more father-sons in that game than we've ever had in our history. So fingers crossed the wheel does turn eventually. But Frankie, thanks very much. You're at the club for the best part of 2 decades. A great story of persistence. And then obviously you ended up playing 250 games, which I think less than 2% of AFL players ever do. So a lot to be proud of. And as I said, your record in big games was excellent. So thanks for joining us and good luck with everything going forward.
No, thanks, fellas. Appreciate the invite, and I really enjoy your podcast. So thanks very much. Go Saints.
Some of our decision making with the ball in our defensive half, giving the ball back, they scored 6 goals, 4 from really us just kicking the ball to them or making an error, which was something that we've been pretty good at and something that we'll keep working on. But we've just got to, be a bit patient. And, some of our mark play on stuff, we were around 50%, which we're usually around 26, 27%. So we just need to be patient in the game. Even when the scores were level, we're trying to all win the game when we still had 2 minutes 35 where we can just play the game out and build the ball up. And
look ahead to round 7 against the Adelaide Crows, 3-3. Really interesting juncture. We haven't beaten Adelaide since July of 2011, so it's been 9 years since we beat the Crows. We beat them by 103 points that night in Neil Craig's last game as coach of the Crows. A lot has changed in the world since then, but we're hoping that one thing does change this week and we break that hoodoo. It's an interesting matchup. We play Adelaide in their first game back in South Australia, so you think they'd be a little bit fresh and rejuvenated, but they've really struggled. Obviously, a percentage of 52. They struggle to score. Rory Sloane's out, who's a spiritual leader within that club, which certainly helps us. Taylor Walker will come back. He kicks 6 goals a game once a year, and it's usually when they play us. So I'm sure he'll have a day out, as is normally the case. But look, it's one of those ones where they've got to get back on the bike. They're playing a side that's really battling. Yes, it's away from home, but they've got to get used to that. They're not going to be at home again for a long time. So hugely important game. It'll be very interesting to see what they do at the selection table. Obviously, Ben Long out for 3 weeks is one they have to replace. Jonathan Marsh, your sense is a quiet game away from getting dropped. He had a quiet game, 3 possessions on the weekend. So do they opt for Ryder or something like that? But I'd say that Long gets replaced, and I think they'll make at least 2 additional changes. It's just whether they go with. I'm hearing rumours too that Dan Hanbury is a heck of a lot closer than they suggest, and they actually think he's right to go. It's just whether they pull the trigger or not. But talking to a few people today, I think St Kilda consider Dan Hanbury to be fit and available. It's just whether they pull the trigger straight away. So we await the selection news, but very important game. Extremely important game. I think I said on during the week in our chat that it's the most important game we've played in a very, very long time because of the consequences if we lose it. But I still see it that way. Huge game.
Yeah, I probably would be putting Hanbury on a plane unless he's 101% ready to go. It's the flight he'll sit there and for a bit and be cramped up, and that's when the hammies will get a little bit tight, and maybe the second week is the one where he's someone who maybe replace one of the other players, or because it's going to be it's a 5-day turnaround, I believe, isn't it? So it could be maybe bringing back the second week, but it's funny you talk about Texley's one game, playing 1 game a year. He's the new Kurt Tippett. He only ever plays against St Kilda, but it's going to be hard replacing Ben Long too, because he's sort of really bolted down a position this year. Is Webster right to go? I'm thinking who's going to actually come in and take that spot for him? I mean, someone's got 3 weeks to prove themselves to stay in the team.
Webster maybe just for the solid frame. I mean, there's be a temptation to pick a kid, and I hope we do pick the likes of Burns and Vital at some stage. But I just wonder whether Webster, in a game like this and the circumstances, might be the way to go.
Is that going to be maybe his last opportunity to really prove himself?
Possibly.
Yeah, but ever who it is needs to really come in and take that position and make it theirs and say, kick me out again. Don't let them do it. Just I sort of want to see these players fighting for position. Make the team not be able to kick him out of the side. It just didn't feel like that on the weekend. It wasn't a lot of this player is really holding themselves. This player is really holding themselves. There's a lot of replaceables at the minute.
Yeah, well, Adelaide have been terrible, and I suppose if there's any team that's going to play them back into form, it's probably us, because we tend to do that with teams that are terrible. But yeah, I think you're right. Webster's probably the obvious one to bring in, but I think there's another guy who must be close, and Dylan Robertson, playing that kind of free man across half back. He doesn't need to take a direct defender, direct opposition. He can play that loose man. Ben Long's been really impressive with his hardness, and that's something that I wasn't expecting. I thought that he's going to be a bit of that Robertson, kind of play a bit loose, quick off half-back flank and down the wings. But he's really impressed me with his toughness and his hardness. And I think Robertson, while he does play a bit of that loose man in defence, he also has that underrated hardness and toughness. And a bit of that leadership that I think we lacked last week in that second half to settle things down, calm the guys down, and just kind of, let's get a hold of ourselves here and really let's regroup and get back in this game. I think Robertson has that ability, and it's not just his ability as a footballer, but as a leader and someone who can really help control the guys out in the field. Because I feel like we really lacked leadership in the second half of last week. So Robertson's one guy that I'd be seriously looking at, depending on his fitness, obviously. And there were some concerns early in the year as to whether he was right to play. So it's going to be interesting to see if he's good to go, because he's one that I would seriously consider. But Webster, I think, he also underrated toughness. Hits the ball hard, loves to drive the ball out of defence, which we needed again last week. Someone to really kick long and break the lines. And take the game on, I think would really help us. I'm not sure that either of Bytel or Burns are a great in for Long, but it really remains to be seen if there's any other outs. I think Marsh is again the obvious one, as you said, Parker. I think there are guys that could come in and play that defensive forward role that Marsh has been brought in to do, and probably do it better than him, given matchups. Another one is Ryder. Does Ryder get a game? He obviously knows Adelaide really well. He knows the ground. He knows the players. He knows the matchups. And he'd almost be like a coach out there as well, and another leader out in the ground, which I think would be really important. So really looking forward to seeing what they do this week. We spoke about, the coaching panel and selection team kind of making an example of the guys, and maybe this is a good time to do it. I'm not sure that guys like Marshall and what are the guys to drop at the moment, but might be a good time to bring in Ryder to give him some assistance and some leadership and some guidance out in the field when he's struggling, because that was probably Rowan Marshall's worst game for St Kilda.
Yeah.
And he's been smashed by some of those bigger ruckmen. Look at Grundy and Gawn over the last few years.
But hasn't looked beaten.
Yeah.
He looked beaten stats wise. But
he looked like a fish out of water. He looked like a fish out of water last week, and that was concerning. But a lot of the guys did. So I'm trying not to think about it too much, but it could be a good week to bring Ryder back in to settle things down.
One thing I do think we need to do is bringing, if we are bringing some players in, bringing in some pace. Adelaide are looking very slow. They are very chippy. They're very they don't look like they know what they're doing going forward. So if we can have the players that we've been having so far this year with Loney and just those small players who are giving all the pressure on the ball, hold them up, make them kick over us again. And they have really, really struggled moving the ball. Let's just get the pace and break their lines.
Well, since round one, when they kicked 11 goals, 5 against Sydney, they've kicked 5 goals, 5, 4 goals, 5, 7 goals, 4, so 11 shots, 4 goals, 10, and 5 goals, 4. So they've kicked scores in the 30s 4 times and 1 score in the 40s. So they've struggled to score. So we've got to, if we put on any level of defensive pressure and have our run going, surely we would have enough offensive talent the other way. But stranger things have happened, and we set ourselves up to win both of these games. It would be most unfortunate if we were to lose both of them, obviously having dropped the other Fremantle game. And obviously we need a bit of momentum going into play Port Adelaide, who will be at the very least top 2 when we play them the following week. And obviously the fixture post that, we'll find out what that means. Obviously the club opting to fly between Noosa and Adelaide, which It makes sense when you consider that they're only going to fly 23 players to Adelaide. They'd have to uproot their entire setup in Noosa to fly all the way down to Adelaide and base themselves there, knowing they've got to go back to Queensland anyway. So I can kind of see the sentiment behind it. But fingers crossed, huge game against Adelaide on Monday. It's always nice if you can tick off wins against sides you haven't beaten for a very, very long time, and Adelaide and Port for that matter. Two of those, but the Crows in particular.
How was the celebration amongst Saints fans when they announced that we were going to play Port in Melbourne a few weeks ago, and then to find out not only are we not going to China, we're not going to play them in Melbourne, but now we're playing them in what was supposed to be a home game. We're going to play them in Adelaide. The week after, we play Adelaide, and we're basing ourselves in Noosa. So it's
in front of 30,000 Port Adelaide fans, mind you,
and a 5-day break.
A 5-day break.
Yeah, when they're on top of the ladder. So.
Everything possible that could be against what we're going to previously do. It just
we'll just make the win all the more. We'll just make the win all the more meritorious. Every time we play Port Adelaide in Adelaide, we usually get beaten by less than a goal. So that suggests we'll be in the game. So hopefully, but obviously we're going to get through the Crows first of all. Some listener questions, and I did put a tweet out as well earlier today in regards to any particular ex-Saints you'd like to hear from. Just tweet those through to us. We did have someone this afternoon say Justin Peckett, so well done, correct weight, which came through very quickly. But just send those through to us, and we'll endeavour to track those down. They can be obscure. If you want to hear from Daniel Healy or something like that, just fire it through. Or perhaps something a little bit more obvious, like a Justin Kazitsky or something like that. Happy to chase that up. But some questions via the socials. NB Bowls Future. I'll throw this one to you, H. Has Brad Hill impressed you so far, both on and off the field?
Off the field, it sounds like he's definitely been a positive to the club. I mean, every single photo I've seen of him taking at training, he's got a massive smile on his face. He's loving being there, but I think it hasn't 100% got onto the field yet. I don't know whether he's had a little bit of a tag, just hasn't quite found his spot yet. But I mean, we've seen flashes. I still remember his first kick in the preseason game against Hawthorn. Then just clear off the boot, straight onto the chest, and we've just gone, if we could just have that all year, that would. But we've seen a few little flashes, but we know there's a lot more there and a lot more to come.
The next question comes from one of the more passionate Saints. You're hard pressed to find a more passionate Sainter than Michael60 on Twitter. And Parker, I'll ask you this one. Who's our next inspirational A grader who can try and steady the ship when things go as they did on Saturday? Our Selwood or Cripps or Dusty or Fife? Can we really be a genuine contender until we get one?
Well, probably not a genuine contender per se. I guess we look at our A grade talent. So Brad Hill, who we just spoke about, is more of an A grade talent, but not necessarily the guy that's going to split a pack open and take the contested mark inside 50 that you might get. Like Fife took that mark against us on the halftime siren. Bontempelli going back with the flight against Sydney. Jack Steele's probably our closest to that type of player, but whether he's got the natural brilliance of the others remains to be seen. Gresham and Billings are guys that can potentially, certainly as A grade talent, but I think that's the thing. Our potential A graders or A graders are Marshall, Hill, Gresham, Billings, those types of players would be in that category. I think Cripps, Selwood, Dusty and Fife are unique beasts. They're arguably the best ball players in the comp. Not many teams have a player like that. We don't. Hopefully in time that does come. Max King might be that player. Not yet, but obviously in a couple of years' time, he's got those attributes potentially about him. I don't know, H, have you got the questions?
One from Mindle FC off Twitter. After seeing we're both beating top sides and losing the bottom sides, how far off do you think our consistency will be? And do you think we can push for top 8 and be a real finals contender?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I think it just shows that we are still developing as a side. I think it shows that we're kind of middle of the pack. We're kind of average because we play above average at times, but below average at other times. And when you combine all that together, we're kind of a middle of the road, middle of the ladder kind of team at the moment. We have the ability to play really well against good teams, but we also have the ability to completely throw it away like we did on the weekend. We did in round one against teams that we should really be beating by 6 or 10 goals. once we fix that consistency and you know, we really learn how to play 4 quarters as a team, then really the sky's the limit. And you'd think that we've got a couple more years of bringing talent in and the ability to bring in elite players. You know, hopefully it's not too far away, but I think that we could be a force in the competition if everything keeps developing and we kind of get some of those kinks out of our armour, because we know what we can do when we play good football. We know what we do when we play good team football. And yes, we don't have that A grader like a Fife or a Dusty, but you know, we've got unique talents of our own in guys like Marshall and Gresham and Max King, who could be anything. So it really is a matter of getting the guys to play 4 quarters. And when they do that, the sky's the limit.
And just adding to the end of that, I was going to say, basically, if winning the games we should and then just pinching a couple that we probably shouldn't, that's where you start. That's where the consistency gets. So you win the games that you should. That's your starting point.
Jordan Pierce asked a similar question, and obviously linking it into our youth as well, and probably also I'd say the inexperience of the fact that with so many players coming into the club, that the lack of experience playing together necessarily. And Matt Swanee asking about Seb Ross, and obviously speaking of the frustration, we sort of touched on Seb a little bit earlier in regards to his form. Yes, there's always been issues over perhaps disposal and the amount of goals maybe he does kick, but he's a very creative player on the inside, and you need him obviously complementing guys like Hill, Jones, Billings, those sorts of players. So still an important role to play. I mean, Seb's out of form. He's not no good. He's just out of form. So hopefully that does turn around in due time. But guys, it's a long wait when you lose on a Saturday and you've got to play the following Monday. But fingers crossed we don't start the week in a horrible fashion. But need to get the wheels moving again straight away. So fingers crossed they can do that. And good luck. Hopefully it's not quite as depressing a post-mortem next week.
Yeah, let's hope so. And yeah, we'll go into that 5-day break and get some good practice for the 19 games, or how many games in 19 days or something?
19 days.
Yeah, so there'll be a little bit of practice for it, hopefully, and get that conditioning right for it.